Welcome to a story that will take you into the heart of corporate America, where power, passion, and forbidden desires collide in the most unexpected ways. In the gleaming towers of Manhattan, where ambition drives every decision and professional boundaries seem unbreakable, sometimes a single moment can change everything. If you're ready to dive into this intense journey of love, power, and difficult choices, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's begin this story that proves sometimes the heart wants what it wants, regardless of the consequences. The fluorescent lights of Sterling and Associates hummed their familiar tune as Emma Chen gathered the last of the financial reports from her desk. It was past 9 p.m. on a Thursday, and the 42nd floor of the Manhattan office building had emptied hours ago, or so she thought. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city below, and the occasional ping of the elevator. Emma had been working as a senior financial analyst for 3 years, and she prided herself on her professionalism. At 28, she had climbed the corporate ladder through sheer determination and an unwavering work ethic. Her colleagues respected her sharp mind and her ability to find patterns in numbers that others missed. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of unspoken tensions that had been building for months seemed to press down on her shoulders like a physical force. "Still here, Emma?" The voice made her jump, and she turned to see Alexandra Sterling standing in the doorway of her office. The CEO of Sterling and Associates was a woman who commanded attention without trying. Tall, elegant, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, and eyes that seemed to see everything. At 35, she had built the investment firm from the ground up after inheriting a small family business and transforming it into one of New York's most successful financial companies. "Ms. Sterling," Emma said, her heart rate picking up as it always did when Alexandra was near. "I was just finishing the quarterly projections for the Morrison account." Alexandra stepped into the office, and Emma caught the subtle scent of her perfume. Something expensive and intoxicating. "You work too hard, Emma. The Morrison projections could wait until tomorrow." There was something in Alexandra's voice, a warmth that went beyond professional courtesy. Emma had noticed it before. The way Alexandra's eyes lingered on her during meetings, the way she always seemed to find reasons to stop by Emma's office, the way her hand would brush against Emma's when passing documents. "I like to stay ahead," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Besides, I know how important this account is to you." Alexandra moved closer, and Emma found herself trapped between her desk and the woman who had occupied her thoughts far more than was appropriate. "You know what's important to me, Emma?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Emma looked up into Alexandra's eyes and saw something that made her breath catch. Desire, vulnerability, and a hunger that mirrored her own forbidden feelings. "Ms. Sterling, Alex," Alexandra whispered, reaching up to touch Emma's cheek. "When it's just us, call me Alex." The touch was electric, sending shivers down Emma's spine. She knew she should step away, should maintain the professional distance that had protected them both from this moment. But she couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think of anything except the way Alexandra was looking at her. "We shouldn't," Emma whispered. But even as she said it, she was leaning into the touch. "I know," Alexandra replied, her thumb tracing along Emma's jawline. "I've tried to stay away. God knows I've tried. But Emma, The confession was cut short as Alexandra's phone buzzed with a text message. Both women froze, the spell temporarily broken as reality crashed back in. Alexandra glanced at her phone and sighed. "The board meeting notes for tomorrow," she said, but she didn't move away. Emma looked at the phone, then back at Alexandra's face. The vulnerability was still there, mixed with frustration and longing. Without thinking, without allowing herself to consider the consequences, Emma reached up and pulled Alexandra down to her. The kiss was everything Emma had imagined and more. Alexandra's lips were soft and demanding, and Emma felt herself melting into the embrace. All the months of stolen glances and carefully maintained distance dissolved in that moment. Alexandra's hands tangled in Emma's hair, and Emma pressed closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. When they finally broke apart, both women were breathing heavily. Alexandra rested her forehead against Emma's, her eyes closed. "Emma," she whispered, and there was a world of emotion in that single word. But then footsteps echoed in the hallway, and they sprang apart. The night security guard's flashlight beam swept past the office window as he made his rounds. The moment shattered like glass, leaving them both staring at each other in shock. "I should go," Emma said quickly, grabbing her purse and jacket with shaking hands. "Emma, wait!" But Emma was already rushing past Alexandra, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and fear. What had they done? What would happen now? As she waited for the elevator, she could feel Alexandra watching her from the office doorway, but she couldn't bring herself to look back. The elevator doors opened, and Emma stepped inside, her reflection staring back at her from the polished steel. Her lips were still swollen from the kiss, her hair slightly mussed. She looked like a woman who had just made the biggest mistake of her career. As the elevator descended toward the lobby, Emma made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. Tomorrow, she would submit her resignation. It was the only way to protect them both from the scandal that would surely follow if anyone discovered what had happened between the CEO and her employee. But as the floors ticked by, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that running away wouldn't be as simple as she hoped. Not when Alexandra Sterling was involved. Not when the woman had a reputation for getting exactly what she wanted. The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft ding, and Emma stepped out into the marble lobby, her decision made. She would quit, find another job, and try to forget the way Alexandra had looked at her in that moment before everything changed. What Emma didn't know was that her resignation letter would set off a chain of events that would test everything she thought she knew about love, power, and the price of following your heart in a world that demanded you keep it locked away. Emma's apartment in Brooklyn felt smaller than usual as she paced between the kitchen and living room, her laptop open on the coffee table displaying a half-written resignation letter. The morning sun streamed through her windows, but she had been up all night, replaying every moment of the kiss that had turned her world upside down. Her phone had buzzed 17 times with messages from work colleagues, routine emails, and meeting reminders. But nothing from Alexandra. The silence felt heavier than any words could have. Emma Chen had always been methodical, logical, and careful. These were the qualities that had gotten her through MIT with a double major in finance and economics, that had landed her the job at Sterling & Associates, and that had kept her professional life spotless for 3 years. But none of that mattered now. She sank onto her couch and read the resignation letter for the 10th time. Dear Ms. Sterling, please accept this letter as formal notification of my resignation from my position as Senior Financial Analyst at Sterling & Associates. My last day of work will be 2 weeks from today's date. Thank you for the opportunities for professional and personal growth during my time here. I wish the company continued success. Sincerely, Emma Chen. It was professional, clean, and told her nothing about the real reason behind the decision. How could she possibly explain that she was quitting because she had fallen in love with her boss? That she was terrified of the consequences of their moment of weakness? That every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel Alexandra's lips on hers? Emma's best friend and roommate, Sarah Martinez, emerged from her bedroom in scrubs, ready for her shift at Mount Sinai Hospital. Sarah took one look at Emma's face and immediately sat down beside her. Okay, spill. You look like you haven't slept, and you've been pacing since I got home from my night shift. What happened? Emma had never been good at hiding her feelings from Sarah. They had been friends since college, and Sarah could read her like a book. But this was different. This involved her career, her reputation, and feelings she had never expected to have. I'm quitting my job, Emma said quietly. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. What? Emma, you love that job. You've worked so hard to get where you are. What happened? Emma stared at the resignation letter on her screen. I kissed someone at work. Okay, that's not necessarily a career-ending move unless... Sarah's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh my God, Emma. Please tell me it wasn't your boss. The silence was answer enough. Emma Chen, are you insane? Alexandra Sterling? The CEO? The woman who graces the cover of Forbes and Fortune? That Alexandra Sterling? It wasn't supposed to happen, Emma said miserably. We were working late, she was being kind, and there was this moment where everything just... shifted. I don't know what came over me, Sarah. I've never done anything like this before. Sarah sat back against the couch cushions, processing the information. Okay, Let's think about this rationally. Was it mutual? Emma's cheeks flushed as she remembered the way Alexandra had touched her face, the way she had whispered Emma's name. Yes, very mutual. And now you're running away. I'm protecting both of us, Emma corrected. Do you know what would happen if this got out? The power dynamic alone would destroy both our careers. She could be accused of harassment. I could be labeled as someone who slept her way to the top. It's a mess, Sarah. Sarah studied her friend's face. But you have feelings for her? It wasn't a question, and Emma didn't deny it. It doesn't matter what I feel. This can't work. It's impossible. Says who? Says corporate policy, professional ethics, common sense? Says fear, Sarah interrupted gently. Emma, I've known you for 8 years, and I have never seen you look at anyone the way your face lights up when you talk about work. I thought it was just career passion, but now I'm realizing it was something else entirely. Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling Brooklyn street below. People were heading to work, living their normal lives, dealing with normal problems. She envied them. Even if my feelings are real, even if hers are too, it doesn't change the facts. She's my boss. She's one of the most powerful women in finance. I'm an employee. There's no scenario where this ends well. There's no scenario where running away ends well either, Sarah pointed out. Have you considered actually talking to her about this? Emma laughed bitterly. What would I say? Hi, Ms. Sterling. About that kiss. Should we pretend it never happened, or would you like to discuss how we navigate falling in love in a corporate environment? Maybe not exactly like that, but yes. Emma, you're making a huge decision based on fear and assumptions. What if she's feeling the same way you are right now? What if she's sitting in her office thinking you regret what happened? The thought hadn't occurred to Emma. She'd been so focused on protecting them both from scandal that she hadn't considered how Alexandra might be interpreting her silence. I need to get to work, Emma said, closing her laptop. I'm going to submit this resignation today before I lose my nerve. Emma, please think about this more. Don't make a decision you'll regret for the rest of your life. But Emma was already grabbing her purse and heading for the door. She had made up her mind, and prolonging the agony would only make things worse. The subway ride into Manhattan felt like a funeral procession. Emma stared at her reflection in the dark window and practiced what she would say to HR. She would keep it simple, professional, and brief. She would not mention Alexandra's name, and she would not allow her emotions to show. When she arrived at Sterling & Associates, the office was buzzing with its usual morning energy. Emma nodded to colleagues, answered routine questions about the Morrison projections, and tried to act as if her world hadn't fundamentally shifted the night before. But every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, her heart rate spiked, wondering if it was Alexandra. Every time her phone rang, she expected to hear that familiar voice. The anticipation was exhausting. At 11 a.m., Emma printed her resignation letter and walked toward the HR department. Her hands were steady, her decision final. She was protecting them both, she reminded herself. This was the right thing to do, but as she passed the executive floor on her way to HR, the elevator doors opened, and Alexandra stepped out. Their eyes met for a split second, and Emma saw something in Alexandra's expression that made her chest tighten. Hurt, confusion, and something that looked dangerously like desperation. Emma, Alexandra said softly, but Emma was already hurrying past, her resignation letter clutched in her hand like a shield. She didn't see Alexandra's face crumple, or the way she leaned against the elevator wall as the doors closed behind her. Emma was too focused on reaching HR, on ending this before it could begin, on running away from the most intense thing she had ever felt. But some things, Emma was about to learn, were impossible to run from. Especially when the person you were running from was Alexandra Sterling, a woman who had built an empire by refusing to accept defeat. The elevator at Sterling & Associates had never felt like a trap before. Emma stood in the polished steel box, watching the floor numbers climb toward the executive level where she was supposed to deliver the quarterly reports to Alexandra's office. It had been 2 days since she submitted her resignation to HR, and she had successfully avoided any direct contact with Alexandra during that time. But now, on what was supposed to be one of her final tasks before her 2-week notice period began, Emma couldn't avoid the inevitable confrontation any longer. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 40th floor. Emma took a deep breath and stepped out into the plush hallway that led to the executive offices. Alexandra's assistant, Marcus, looked up from his computer with a knowing smile. "She's waiting for you, Emma," he said gently. "Go right in." Emma's hands tightened on the folder containing the reports. How is she?" Marcus, a kind man in his 50s who had worked for Alexandra for over a decade, studied Emma's face with compassionate eyes. "She's been better. And so have you, from the looks of it. Maybe it's time you two actually talked." Before Emma could respond, Alexandra's office door opened, and she appeared in the doorway. Even after 2 sleepless nights, Alexandra looked stunning in a charcoal gray power suit that emphasized her tall frame and commanding presence. But Emma could see the shadows under her eyes, the tightness around her mouth that spoke of stress and exhaustion. "Emma," Alexandra said, her voice carefully neutral. "Thank you for bringing the reports. Please come in." Emma walked into the office, a space she had been in countless times for meetings and presentations. But today, the familiar environment felt charged with tension and unspoken words. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan, and Alexandra's desk was its usual picture of organized efficiency. Alexandra closed the door behind them with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silence. "Please, sit down," Alexandra said, gesturing to the chairs in front of her desk. "I'd rather stand if you don't mind. This won't take long." Emma placed the folder on the desk. "The Morrison projections are complete, along with the quarterly summaries you requested. Everything is in order." Alexandra picked up the folder but didn't open it. Instead, she studied Emma's face with an intensity that made Emma want to look away. "Are we really going to pretend that the only thing we need to discuss is quarterly projections?" Emma's carefully constructed composure wavered. "Ms. Sterling, I don't think—" "Alex," Alexandra said firmly. "You called me Alex 2 nights ago. You can call me Alex now." The memory of that whispered name, spoken in the moment before their kiss, sent heat rushing through Emma's cheeks. That was a mistake. Which part? Calling me Alex or kissing me? The direct question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Emma had prepared for this conversation, had rehearsed professional responses that would allow them both to maintain their dignity. But the raw honesty in Alexandra's voice stripped away all her carefully planned words. "Both," Emma said quietly. "All of it was a mistake." Something flickered in Alexandra's eyes, hurt, anger, or perhaps both. She moved around the desk, eliminating the barrier between them, and Emma instinctively took a step back. "A mistake," Alexandra repeated. "That's what you call the most honest moment either of us has had in months? Ms. Sterling, stop." Alexandra's voice was sharp now, her professional mask slipping to reveal the emotions beneath. "Stop hiding behind titles and formality. Stop pretending that what happened between us was just some momentary lapse in judgment." Emma felt her own defenses rising. "What do you want me to say? That I enjoyed it? That I've been thinking about it for 2 days straight? That I quit my job because I can't trust myself to be in the same room as you without wanting it to happen again?" The confession spilled out before Emma could stop it, and she immediately regretted the words. But Alexandra's expression shifted, hope replacing the hurt. "You quit because you have feelings for me?" Emma laughed bitterly. "I quit because I'm professional enough to recognize an impossible situation when I see one. We can't do this, Alex. You know we can't." "Why?" Alexandra moved closer, and Emma could smell her perfume again, that intoxicating scent that had haunted her dreams. "Because I'm your boss. Because people might talk. Because it's not what's expected. Because it's not real," Emma burst out, her composure finally cracking. "This whole thing, the late-night conversations, the lingering looks, the way you make me feel like I'm the only person in the room, it's all part of some fantasy. In the real world, you're Alexandra Sterling, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I'm just another employee who got swept up in proximity and power dynamics." Alexandra's face went very still. Is that really what you think? I think I'm trying to protect both of us from making a mistake that could ruin our careers and our lives. And I think you're scared, Alexandra said quietly. I think you felt something real 2 nights ago. Something that terrified you so much that you'd rather run away than face it. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Maybe I am scared. Maybe I should be scared. Do you have any idea what would happen if this got out? The board, the media, our competitors, they would tear us both apart. So we keep it private. For how long? Forever? Do you really want to spend the rest of your life sneaking around, hiding a relationship like it's something shameful? Alexandra was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching Emma's face. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I've spent the last 2 days trying to convince myself that you were right to run. That the smart thing, the professional thing, was to let you go and pretend this never happened. She paused, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. But I can't, Emma. I can't pretend that I don't feel something for you that I've never felt for anyone else. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and vulnerable. Emma felt her resolve wavering, her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. Alex, I know the risks, Alexandra continued. I know what we'd be facing. But I also know that I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do, who makes me want to be better, who sees past the CEO to the woman underneath. Emma closed her eyes, fighting against the pull of Alexandra's words. It's not enough. Feelings aren't enough to overcome the obstacles we'd face. Then what is? The question was simple, but Emma didn't have an answer. She opened her eyes to find Alexandra standing closer than ever, her face full of a hope that Emma was terrified to nurture. I don't know, Emma whispered. I honestly don't know. Alexandra reached out slowly, giving Emma time to pull away. When Emma didn't move, Alexandra cupped her face gently, the same touch that had started everything 2 nights ago. Then stay, Alexandra said. Don't quit. Don't run away. Give us a chance to figure it out together. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to imagine it, staying at Sterling and Associates, finding a way to navigate their feelings, building something real despite the obstacles. But then reality crashed back in, harsh and unforgiving. I can't, Emma said, pulling away from Alexandra's touch. I'm sorry, but I can't. She turned toward the door, but Alexandra's voice stopped her. Emma, if you walk out that door, if you really quit and leave, I won't follow you. I won't try to change your mind. But I need you to know that what we have, what we could have, is real. And you're the only person who gets to decide whether it's worth fighting for. Emma's hand rested on the door handle, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Alexandra could hear it. Everything logical, everything professional, told her to leave, to stick with her plan, serve out her notice, and start fresh somewhere else. But the woman behind her, brilliant, powerful, vulnerable Alexandra, was offering her something that felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance at something extraordinary. Emma turned the handle and walked out of the office, leaving Alexandra standing alone by her desk. But as she waited for the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. What Emma didn't know was that Alexandra Sterling had never been in the habit of accepting defeat. And some battles, Alexandra was about to prove, were worth fighting regardless of the cost. Emma's final week at Sterling and Associates passed in a haze of exit interviews, project handovers, and carefully avoided glances toward the executive floor. She had thrown herself into tying up loose ends with the same methodical precision she applied to everything else. But beneath the professional facade, she felt like she was slowly unraveling. Alexandra had kept her word. There were no unexpected visits, no attempts to change Emma's mind, no dramatic gestures. But somehow, her absence felt more powerful than any confrontation could have been. Emma found herself listening for Alexandra's voice in the hallways, looking for her familiar figure in the cafeteria, and checking her email with a hope she refused to acknowledge. It was Friday afternoon, Emma's official last day when everything changed. Emma had just finished clearing out her desk, packing the last of her personal belongings into a cardboard box. Her colleagues had given her a small farewell party during lunch, complete with cake and well wishes for her new opportunity, though Emma had been deliberately vague about where she was going next. The truth was, she didn't have another job lined up. She had some savings, enough to last a few months while she searched for a new position. But every job posting she looked at felt flat, uninspiring compared to the work she had been doing at Sterling & Associates. As 5 o'clock approached, Emma gathered her belongings and headed toward the elevator. The office was emptying out for the weekend, and she wanted to leave before the rush. She was almost to the elevator bank when Marcus, Alexandra's assistant, appeared beside her. "Emma," he said gently, "she'd like to see you before you go." Emma's heart skipped. "I don't think that's a good idea, Marcus." "She's not going to try to change your mind," he assured her. "She just wants to say goodbye properly. 5 minutes, that's all." Against her better judgment, Emma found herself nodding. Marcus led her to the executive elevator, the private one that went directly to Alexandra's floor. As they rode up in silence, Emma tried to prepare herself for seeing Alexandra one last time. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus gestured for her to step out. "She's in her office," he said. "And Emma, for what it's worth, I hope you both find what you're looking for." Emma walked down the familiar hallway, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Alexandra's office door was open, and Emma could see her standing by the windows, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Even from behind, Alexandra's posture spoke of exhaustion and something that looked like defeat. "You wanted to see me?" Emma said softly from the doorway. Alexandra turned, and Emma was struck by how tired she looked. The past week had clearly taken a toll on both of them. "Thank you for coming," Alexandra said. "I know you didn't have to." Emma stepped into the office, setting her box down by the door. "Marcus said you wanted to say goodbye." "I did. I do." Alexandra moved away from the windows, but she kept her distance, respecting the boundaries Emma had established. "I wanted to thank you, first of all, for everything you've contributed to this company. You've been exceptional, Emma, and I hope you know that." "Thank you," Emma replied, her voice carefully professional. "I also wanted to apologize," Alexandra continued, "for putting you in an impossible position, for letting my feelings compromise your comfort at work. You deserved better from me." Emma felt something twist in her chest at the apology. "Alex, you don't need to." "I do," Alexandra said firmly. "You were right about the complications, about the risks. I was selfish to ask you to stay, when I couldn't promise you that we could navigate this without consequences." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Emma wanted to say something, to offer some comfort or reassurance, but the words wouldn't come. "I have something for you," Alexandra said suddenly, moving to her desk. She picked up an envelope and held it out to Emma. "A letter of recommendation. It's comprehensive. Any company would be lucky to have you." Emma took the envelope, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact was electric, just as it had been that night a week ago, and Emma pulled her hand back quickly. "Thank you," she said, looking down at the envelope. "That's very generous. It's the least I can do." Alexandra paused, then added quietly, "There's also my personal number written inside. Not for anything inappropriate, just if you ever need anything. A reference, advice, whatever. I know we can't be what I hoped we could be, but I'd like to think we could still be friends, eventually." Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The offer of friendship felt both like a lifeline and a knife to the heart. "I should go," Emma said, backing toward the door. "Thank you for everything, Alex. Really." "Emma, wait." But Emma was already picking up her box and walking quickly toward the elevator. She couldn't handle another moment in that office, couldn't bear to see the hurt in Alexandra's eyes, or feel the pull of attraction that still hummed between them despite everything. She pressed the elevator button repeatedly, willing it to come faster. When the doors finally opened, she stepped inside and turned to find Alexandra standing in her office doorway, watching her leave. Their eyes met one last time as the elevator doors began to close, and Emma saw something in Alexandra's expression that made her heart race. Determination, resolve, and something that looked dangerously like a plan forming. The elevator descended smoothly, but Emma felt like she was free-falling. By the time she reached the lobby, she was shaking, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. She made it 3 blocks from the office before she had to stop and lean against a building, tears streaming down her face. She had done the right thing, the professional thing, the safe thing. So why did it feel like she was dying inside? Emma wiped her eyes and continued walking toward the subway station. She had a new life to build, new opportunities to find. The chapter of her life that included Alexandra Sterling was officially closed, but as she descended into the subway station, Emma didn't notice the black town car that had been following her since she left the office. She didn't see Alexandra sitting in the back seat, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke in rapid, urgent tones. "I don't care what it takes," Alexandra was saying. "I want to know everything about Emma Chen's plans, where she's interviewing, what companies she's considering, everything. And then I want you to clear my schedule for Monday morning. I have some calls to make." Alexandra Sterling hadn't built a successful company by accepting defeat gracefully. And she was about to prove that sometimes, the most important battles were the ones worth fighting dirty for. Emma thought she was walking away from Alexandra Sterling for good. She had no idea that Alexandra was just getting started. The chase was about to begin. Monday morning found Emma in her Brooklyn apartment, laptop open on her kitchen table, as she scrolled through job listings with growing frustration. Every position seemed flat and uninspiring compared to the work she had been doing at Sterling & Associates. She had spent the weekend trying to convince herself that leaving had been the right decision, but the ache in her chest suggested otherwise. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee? There's something you need to know. Emma." Emma stared at the message, recognizing it had to be from Marcus, Alexandra's assistant. Her first instinct was to ignore it. She had made her choice, and contact with anyone from Sterling & Associates would only make moving forward more difficult. But something in the tone of the message made her hesitate. 20 minutes later, Emma found herself sitting across from Marcus in a small cafe in Lower Manhattan, far from their usual corporate haunts. Marcus looked uncomfortable, glancing around nervously as he stirred his coffee. "I shouldn't be here," he said without preamble. "If Alex knew I was talking to you." "Then why are you?" Emma asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Emma a series of emails. "Because she's been working 18-hour days since you left. Because she's called in favors with half the financial district. Because she's about to do something that could destroy her reputation, and I think you're the only person who can stop her." Emma's blood ran cold as she read the emails. Alexandra had been in contact with every major investment firm in Manhattan, using her considerable influence to... What exactly? "I don't understand," Emma said, though a terrible suspicion was beginning to form. Marcus leaned forward, his voice urgent. "She's been calling companies where you might apply. Not to sabotage you, never that, but to offer partnerships, investment opportunities, consulting contracts, anything that would give her a reason to work with whatever firm hires you." Emma stared at him in shock. "She's what?" "She's trying to find a way to still be in your professional life. She's convinced that if she can just create the right circumstances, the right opportunities, maybe you'll see that this thing between you two could work." The implications hit Emma like a physical blow. Alexandra was risking her professional reputation, potentially compromising business deals, all to manufacture reasons to stay connected to Emma. "Marcus, this is insane. She could be accused of stalking, harassment." "I know," Marcus said miserably. "That's why I'm here." "She's lost perspective, Emma. I've worked for her for 10 years, and I've never seen her like this. She's brilliant in business because she's logical, strategic, but with you, logic has gone out the window." Emma's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Emma Chen." "Ms. Chen, this is David Rodriguez from Goldman Sachs. I believe you submitted an application for our senior analyst position?" Emma's heart sank. Goldman Sachs was one of the top firms on her list. "Yes, I did." "Excellent. I'm calling to schedule an interview. We're very impressed with your background, and we've recently entered into an exciting partnership with Sterling and Associates that could provide incredible opportunities for the right candidate. Emma closed her eyes, feeling sick. I see. Could I call you back to schedule? I need to check my calendar. Of course. We're very much looking forward to meeting with you. Emma hung up and looked at Marcus, who was watching her with sympathetic eyes. How many? She asked quietly. Every application you've submitted in the past 3 days. She's been working around the clock to create partnerships, investment opportunities, consulting agreements. She's essentially trying to buy her way back into your life. Emma felt a mixture of anger, heartbreak, and something that might have been awe. The scope of what Alexandra was attempting was staggering and completely unsustainable. She's going to destroy herself, Emma said. Yes, Marcus agreed. Unless someone stops her. Emma stood up abruptly. Where is she now? In her office. She has back-to-back meetings with potential partners all afternoon. Marcus grabbed her arm gently. Emma, she's not thinking clearly. Be careful how you handle this. Emma was already heading for the door. The subway ride back to Manhattan felt eternal, her mind racing through everything Marcus had told her. By the time she reached Sterling and Associates, her anger had crystallized into cold determination. She bypassed the main elevators and went straight to the executive level. Marcus must have called ahead because security didn't stop her, and the receptionist merely nodded as she passed. Alexandra's office door was closed, but Emma could hear voices inside. Alexandra's measured tones, and a man's voice she didn't recognize. Emma waited impatiently, pacing the hallway until the meeting ended, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit emerged from the office. Emma didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed open Alexandra's office door and stepped inside, closing it firmly behind her. Alexandra looked up from her desk, surprise and something that might have been hope flickering across her face. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes speaking to sleepless nights and relentless work. Emma, Alexandra breathed, standing up slowly. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Emma's voice was sharp with anger and disbelief. What are you doing, Alex? Goldman Sachs? Morgan Stanley? JP Morgan Chase? Really? Alexandra's face went pale, and she sank back into her chair. Marcus told you. Thank God he did, because apparently you've lost your mind. Emma moved closer to the desk, her hands shaking with adrenaline. Do you have any idea what you're risking? Your reputation? Your company? Your entire career? I know exactly what I'm risking, Alexandra said quietly, her eyes never leaving Emma's face. Then why? Why are you doing this? Alexandra stood again, moving around the desk with the predatory grace that had always made Emma's pulse race. But now, instead of desire, Emma felt a complicated mix of anger and heartbreak. Because I can't let you go, Alexandra said simply. Because the thought of you working somewhere else, building a life that doesn't include me, is driving me insane. So you decided to manipulate the entire financial district to force me back into your orbit? I decided to create opportunities, Alexandra corrected, though she had the grace to look ashamed. I thought if I could just... You thought what? That if you threw enough money and influence around, I'd forget all the reasons why this is impossible. Emma's voice cracked with emotion. Alex, this isn't romance. It's stalking with a corporate budget. The words hit Alexandra like a physical blow, and she stepped back as if Emma had slapped her. That's not... I never meant... Alexandra's composure finally cracked, and Emma saw the desperation beneath the powerful facade. Emma, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to find a way for us to have a chance. By sabotaging my job search, by making it impossible for me to start fresh anywhere in the city. I'm not sabotaging anything. Alexandra's voice rose, her own anger finally surfacing. Every partnership I've offered is legitimate. Every deal would benefit both companies. I'm not trying to hurt your career. I'm trying to... To what? Buy me back? Purchase my affections with business deals? To prove to you that we could work together, Alexandra shouted, then immediately looked stricken by her own outburst. She took a deep breath, visibly trying to regain control. "Emma, you said the obstacles were too great, that the professional complications made this impossible. I thought if I could show you that there were ways around those obstacles by creating a web of business relationships that would make it impossible for me to escape you. Alex, do you hear yourself?" Emma moved closer, and Alexandra backed up until she was pressed against the window, trapped between Emma and the glass. "I hear a woman who's terrified of losing the only person who's ever made her feel truly alive," Alexandra whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The raw honesty in Alexandra's voice pierced through Emma's anger, leaving her momentarily speechless. They stood frozen, inches apart, breathing heavily as months of tension and suppressed emotion crackled in the air between them. "This has to stop," Emma said finally, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Alex, you have to stop." "I can't," Alexandra said desperately. "Emma, I've tried. I've tried to let you go, tried to move on, tried to convince myself that you were right about everything. But I can't function without you. I can't think straight, can't focus on work, can't even sleep without dreaming about you." Emma felt her resolve wavering as she looked into Alexandra's eyes and saw her own desperation reflected there. "Alex, I know I'm being irrational," Alexandra continued, her hands coming up to frame Emma's face. "I know I'm risking everything, acting like a madwoman. But Emma, I love you. I'm in love with you, completely and utterly, and I don't know how to stop." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and vulnerable, and terrifying in its intensity. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes as she realized that all her careful logic, all her professional reasoning, crumbled in the face of those 3 simple words. "You love me," Emma repeated as if testing the words. "I love you," Alexandra confirmed, her thumbs wiping away the tears that had started to fall down Emma's cheeks. "I love your brilliant mind, and your terrible coffee habits, and the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I love how you challenge me and inspire me, and make me want to be better than I am." Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of Alexandra's words and her own answering feelings. "This is insane," she whispered. "We're both going to get hurt." "Maybe," Alexandra agreed. "But Emma, what if we don't? What if we're strong enough to handle whatever comes? What if we're worth fighting for?" Emma opened her eyes and found Alexandra watching her with an expression of such hope and vulnerability that it took her breath away. "The board will never accept it," Emma said. But even she could hear that her protests were weakening. "Then we'll deal with the board. The media will tear us apart. Let them try. My career. We'll flourish, because you're brilliant and talented, and I'll make sure the whole world knows it." Emma felt herself leaning into Alexandra's touch despite her reservations. "Alex, what you've done, manipulating those companies." "I'll undo all of it," Alexandra promised quickly. "I'll call every CEO, withdraw every offer, explain that it was a temporary lapse in judgment. Your job search will be completely clean, I swear. And if I take one of those positions anyway?" Alexandra's smile was soft and sad. "Then I'll be happy for you, and I'll find a way to move on. But Emma, before you make that decision, I need you to know something." "What?" Alexandra's hands slid down to Emma's shoulders, her grip firm and possessive. "You're mine, Emma Chen. Not because I own you, not because I can control you, but because my heart belongs to you completely. And I think, if you're honest with yourself, yours belongs to me too." The words sent a shiver through Emma's entire body. She wanted to deny it, wanted to maintain the careful distance she had tried so hard to create. But standing here in Alexandra's arms, feeling the truth of those words resonate in her bones, she couldn't lie anymore. "Alex," she whispered, and Alexandra must have heard the capitulation in her voice because her eyes widened with hope. "Stay with me," Alexandra pleaded. "Not at the company, not as an employee. Stay with me as the woman I love, as my partner, as my equal. We'll figure out the rest together." Emma studied Alexandra's face, searching for any sign of manipulation or calculation. but all she saw was love, hope, and a vulnerability that took her breath away. "If we do this," Emma said slowly, "if we really try this, there have to be rules, boundaries. We do this the right way or not at all." Alexandra nodded eagerly. "Anything. Whatever you need. I want to finish out my notice period properly. No special treatment, no interference in my job search. If we're going to be together, it has to be because we choose each other, not because you've eliminated all my other options." "Done. And we keep this private until we figure out how to handle it professionally. No public displays, no office romance drama." "Agreed." Emma took a deep breath. "And Alex? If this goes wrong, if it destroys our careers or our lives, I need to know that you won't regret it. Because I'm terrified that I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life, but I'm even more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave enough to try." Alexandra's smile was radiant as she pulled Emma closer. "Emma Chen, loving you could never be a mistake. It might be complicated, it might be challenging, but it will never be a mistake." And then Alexandra was kissing her, soft and desperate and full of promises, and Emma finally stopped fighting the pull of her heart. She kissed back with months of suppressed longing, her arms winding around Alexandra's neck as she pressed closer. When they finally broke apart, both women were breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together as they held each other in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the office windows. "So what happens now?" Emma asked. Alexandra smiled, her eyes bright with love and mischief. "Now we figure out how to navigate loving each other in a world that might not approve. But Emma, I meant what I said. You're mine, and I'm yours. And nothing else matters as much as that." Emma felt a smile spread across her face for the first time in days. "I love you too, Alex. God help me, but I love you too." As they held each other in the gleaming office high above Manhattan, both women knew that the road ahead would be complicated and challenging. There would be professional obstacles, personal sacrifices, and difficult choices to make. But for the first time since that night when everything changed, Emma felt like she could breathe again. Because sometimes, the biggest risks led to the greatest rewards. And sometimes, love really was worth fighting for. And there you have it. A love story that proves sometimes the most impossible things become possible when two people are brave enough to fight for what matters most. Emma and Alexandra's journey reminds us that real love isn't always convenient or easy, but it's always worth the risk when it's genuine. Thank you so much for joining me on this emotional journey through the halls of corporate America, where power and passion collided in the most beautiful way. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more compelling tales of love, ambition, and the courage to follow your heart. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Emma made the right choice? How do you think they'll navigate the challenges ahead? Your engagement means the world to me, and it helps me create more content that you'll love. Until next time, remember that the best stories are often about people who dare to choose love over fear, even when the world tells them it's impossible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.